The Interview.
Swedish Medical Center, guess what? They were taking money illegally, taking union dues away from the paychecks of their employees, and those employees just got a big victory. Joining me on the line is the president of the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation. His name is Mark Mix, and joins me now. Mark, take us through this pretty significant victory.
Yeah, Jason, this is, I won't say that it's really an amazing victory, except for the fact that we actually won something against organized labor on behalf of individual employees. And we've been trying to do that for years and years and years, and every once in a while we get one of these that show just how blatant the abuse of workers are. And for 18 employees at the Swedish Medical Center in Seattle who were battling against the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, and for, unfortunately, the employer in this case, they found out that during a hiatus of the contract, when the contract wasn't enforced, they couldn't be forced to pay union dues to keep their jobs. While some of these workers had done that before, because the law in Washington state says you've got to pay dues or be fired if the contract specifies that. But there's some protections that we've won for these employees. And in this case, it was a really interesting story because one of the employees who came to us first decided to exercise his rights under a U.S. Supreme Court case that we won way back in 1988 that still gets violated to this day, Jason. I know that's not a surprise.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, we have to stay after this stuff, right? So he recognized that he wasn't forced to pay full dues, which includes the full political component of union dues that are spent on politics and ideological causes, which he disagreed with. So he was exercising those rights, but his rights went further, that once the contract expired, there was no authorization or no obligation under very well-settled law that he didn't have to pay any union dues at all until a new contract was approved or whatever happened. But, of course, the union never told him that, and they continued to force all of these workers who were trying to exercise their rights to continue to pay dues when the fact the contract wasn't in force.
How much money did these members have to pay, these workers have to pay into the union dues that they didn't have to?
Well, we know they got around $3,200 to $3,300 back split in, but that was just during the period that the contract had expired and hadn't been renewed. Because if the contract was enforced, they would still be forced to pay regular union dues or fees in order to keep their job. So what we got them back was the amount that the union had taken out of their paychecks and the employer forwarded to the union during that contract hiatus. And every worker in America, whether you're in a right-to-work state or a non-right-to-work state like Washington, has those rights, that if a contract expires, you can't be obligated to pay union dues or fees. That doesn't mean you won't be forced in the future, but it does mean that during that period when the contract expired, not in force, you can get out of those forced union dues and fees.
But again, $3,200, $3,300, that's a good chunk of change, right? I mean, that's a significant money that is being taken away from employees illegally.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wouldn't be, it's bad enough as it is, but then when you have the union hiding it, and that's what really happened in this case, when these employees brought this to the attention of the National Labor Relations Board and the General Counsel, who Joe Biden knew was standing up for employees, and so he had to be fired 23 minutes into the new administration back in January. When the General Counsel stood up and said, these workers are right. They have certain rights in the workplace, and these rights are well settled, and the union has to give this money back.
How often does this actually happen? You point out that laws are broken all the time when it comes to worker rights, but how often would you say it actually happens here in Washington State?
Well, it happens a lot. I mean, the Freedom Foundation has been very aggressive in working on these types of cases in the public sector, no doubt, and they've made great progress, and they've branched out into Oregon and California, and Tom McCabe and Aaron Wheat are doing a good job doing that there. So evidence of the number of cases they bring, plus the number of cases that we bring for private sector employees and public sector employees in Washington across the country. Jason, I'll tell you this. We have over 250 active cases right now with fact patterns much like these where workers have had their rights violated by forced unionism agreements.
Have things gotten worse since Biden took office?
Absolutely. They have, like I said, he fired the general counsel who had almost 11 months left on his term. It's the first time in our federal labor law history that any general counsel of an independent agency has been fired by a president. Basically, he was asked to resign 23 minutes into his administration when he said, no, you shouldn't be doing this. You're putting a thumb on the scale of justice in the workplace. But Biden fired him anyway because this guy was standing up for employee rights. It's gotten worse. And now everything that Joe Biden is doing, if you listen to him tell you, everything's about, empowering union officials to be able to collect more union dues across the country, including his support for repeal of all 27 right-to-work laws across the country, which simply protect workers from being forced, from losing their jobs if they don't pay union dues or fees.
Folks, you need to make sure you're paying attention to what the law actually says, what your rights actually allow for. You can go to the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation online, nrtw.org, Mark Mix is the president. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
Jason, always a privilege. Thank you.
Absolutely.